and welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. I am your host. I'm Mary Anders. I work with nonprofit leaders to grow their influence so they can increase their impact and put more good in the world. And I am with Joey Goone, who is with Utopia Experience. And I love what you say because your mantra is your sole purpose is to serve those that serve the world. Like me too. That's so awesome. Thank you for being on here. We're going to talk about, telling your story and all about video stories for nonprofit organizations because you've done a lot. All right, now I'm gonna do the bio, Joey, and then I'm gonna ask my first question. Here's what I think. When I ask people for a short bio, I get like 6 paragraphs, but you actually have a really good short bio. Like, it's awesome. This is like, I want people to listen to this because when people ask you for a short bio, this is what they're looking for. You're the president of the Utopia Experience. Utopia is an experience creation company, namely producing events and video stories for nonprofit organizations. They've helped 200 nonprofits raise more than $30 million since the onset of the pandemic. So that's like 2.5 years, which is crazy to think about. We've been living at this long. But Joey's mantra and Utopia's sole purpose is to serve those that serve the world. That's it. That's a bio. Audience directed, interesting. It's good. Thank you for that. All right, Joey, welcome to the Influential Nonprofit. My first question is always the same question, which is, tell me something you're proud of that you don't get to brag about that often.
I am proud. I think it's, I'm really proud of my team. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but
no, please get emotional. I love that. I love all the feelings.
We just produced an event for the World Paralympics, which is a nonprofit federation that is a global organization that brings Paralympic athletes together for sort of a very similar Olympic level competition for the disability community. And it was their first time ever in the United States. And so this was sort of setting the precedent of, wow, should we consider coming back to the United States in the future? And the WPPO, the World Paralympics Organization, is now on a first name basis with us. I've been texting them. They asked me to go out to dinner. We spend time together. They came to us and said, you guys have helped us set the bar and the expectation for all of our events moving forward all over the world. They're going to be in Paris next year. They're going to be in Mexico the following.
Wow.
And then they're going to Dubai. And so just bragging on our team for a moment, I feel so incredibly honored and so humble that we were able to help co-create these little moments in time for these incredible athletes. From thousands of athletes were here at Logan University from all over the world. And we were able to be a small part of it and to create those moments and that experience for these athletes and for the World Paralympic Organization.
Wow, that's amazing. Whoa. I didn't even know that was in St. Louis. I had no idea. It was so good you were part of it. And also the other thing is, I want to touch on is we just chatted about that your last name is Goone. So what was it like growing up with that last name? What did that do for you?
Oh my gosh. Having a last name like Goone, it really forced me to be resilient and to step into the best version of myself at a very young age. Because like your husband's last name, you can imagine I was teased a little bit on the playground. And so I thought...
Which for people who don't know is my husband's name is John and his last name is Schmucke. Schmuke.
So, and I love it. And so you've got to stop taking life so seriously. That's the advice I gave myself at a very young age, and just play and be happy and know that people's judgment about you is really only a self-reflection, right? And so I've just stepped into being the best goon that I can possibly be. And there are a lot of literal goons in this country.
Yes.
I'm sorry, metaphorical goons, and I'm just a literal one, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, my husband had, I think, and his brothers, and their whole family. There's a lot of schmuckies around Missouri, and he did have like very interesting experiences. My kids are their last name is Schmucky, And they've had some interesting experiences, but for the most part, everybody just sort of rolls with it. They don't know any different, and it's fine, you know. We do, but
Marianne, there are also a lot of schmuckies on this planet.
there's a lot of like when I would have a lot of like clients I was working with, a lot of like with the J and other like clients, and different like a synagogue, and they say, you know, like, oh, the schmuck, and they would use that, and I'm like, well, my husband's last name is Schmucky, and they're like, what? And they just got a kick out of it so much. It's German name. Again, like you, he just started to let things roll, and they're all pretty mellow people anyway. And yeah. All right, so let's talk about the nonprofits. Okay, first of all, I just want to, the most impressive thing to me is you helped 200 nonprofits raise over $30 million. How in the world did that happen?
Well, that's a great question. What I'd love to do is dive into a specific example.
Okay.
And so we had a nonprofit approached us with what they thought was this insurmountable challenge, and they didn't think they'd be able to solve it. And they were, in the past, they had these incredible experiences that were dependent on A-list performers to create large audiences for them and to garner huge contributions from those audiences of thousands of people. And so they naturally became dependent on that model. And this year,
so a big event, like a show, right? Or like huge show, lots of people coming with kind of a celebrity headliner star to draw people in.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they left with this feeling of, wow, that was a great celebrity performance. I loved the music. And who the heck was that nonprofit?
Right.
And so they became dependent on that model. And unfortunately, post-COVID for them, they didn't have the budget to bring in that A-list celebrity performer because, you know, like everybody, they've sort of been feeling the financial pressure. And since this had been their operation for the 3 years, bumping up to, you know, past years pre-COVID, they were really unsure of how to look at a new model and to recapture their existing and potentially new audiences. And so we provided them with a solution that was modeled around what we call a 3C approach. And this is sort of the answer to your question, is that there are 3 forms of capital. And we think of these forms of capital as the reason why anyone, anywhere decides to go to an event anytime. And those things are pretty simple. It's intellectual capital. People want to learn new things. Social capital. They want to meet new people. And communal capital, which is the most important one. It might not be the reason why they come to the event, but it's often the reason why they're going to come back and stay engaged. And that's because people want to find other people that are trying to solve similar challenges, that have similar aspirations, and that they can bond with those people in an effort to, you know, through your group, to have a higher transcendent purpose in life, to eradicate hunger,
right,
to scale hope for those in need, to make wishes come true, to strike out cancer. And in this case, it was to serve families that have children with disabilities. And so coming back to your question, now that I've introduced that, it's like, what was the solution? And the solution was really informing and educating the audience on how critical the mission is to the community and the families and children in need, not how great this celebrity performance was. And so I have some more specifics there on how we actually created that third form of capital, that third form, which is communal capital, at the event. If you want me to dive deeper into that, I'm happy.
So was this virtual or was this in person?
This was in person.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I would love to do that, because one of the things I talk a lot about, you know, is people come for the cause, but they stay for the community, right? Like, and they want to be a part of something bigger or greater than themselves. And that sounds like that's what you're providing at that event. So I'd love to know, you know, what that looks like.
I love that. They come for the cause, they stay for the community. I love that. And it's so incredibly true. And so when we're sitting around the planning table with this particular organization, we ask the question is like, how can we create that community-like experience where people walk away with this higher transcendent purpose and this deeper emotional connection than they've ever had in the past? And so at this event specifically, And no two events are the same. No two organizations are the same. So we think of everything, when we're working with organizations, we're always trying to think as creatively as we can possibly think, to create those unique moments in time, those unique ripples, that will be felt, where people walk away from the event and they're like, I don't know exactly what it is, but those people are my people.
Yeah.
And so we created this museum-like experience where intimate groups of attendees were led by a tour guide, and that tour guide was a volunteer of this organization, so they knew the organization well. And these intimate groups stopped at various exhibits throughout the venue, which had these massive display walls that we built. And in the center of these display walls was a video screen. And each video screen highlighted a different program and family whose lives have been enhanced by the organization's mission. And after they went through these 4 different display wall exhibits, those families were actually in attendance for meet and greets, and they popped into all these different intimate groups where people could engage with them, ask them questions. And so attendees were able to directly connect with recipients. But perhaps most importantly, because they were in these small breakout groups, they were able to connect with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so before butts hit the seats, people were like, they're so deeply connected to the organization through these relatable emotional stories of these families and their children, and through the difference that this organization was making in the lives of these of these children. But again, perhaps most importantly, and it comes back to what you shared, they come for the content and they stay for the community, or come back for the community, is they felt deeply connected to each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about, I went to a luncheon. This was earlier in the year, and it was room full of women. And I had a table. A friend invited me. Another friend actually puts this event on, but a friend invited me, and I sat down at this table, and I'm like looking around the room, and like there are so many people I wanted to meet, but you sit down, and then there's a little bit of chatter, and then the program starts.
Yeah.
And there was really no time to connect with people, and then kind of like it was a luncheon, so it was during the day, so people, they were very considerate of our time, which was awesome. Like then I got up, like, oh, I felt a little incomplete because I really wanted to connect, because, well, first of all, it's me, because I'm just like, Marianne's friends with the whole world, she just hasn't met them all yet, so I'm just like, who's here, who could I, but also, like, in the old model, like, so in this model I'm sitting down right away, but in the model that you described of this organization before, like when you're going to a show, you just sit down, right, and watch the show. You may say something to one person on one side of you or something, but that's pretty much it. And then you watch the show, right, like or whatever. So I feel like this is a really cool way of taking some of those big events and having more connection to people, right? Like this model, that was just so cool and clever. And then I'm thinking, wow, what was that really pricey, making those 4 displays? Was it I don't know, but they probably saved money not having to pay some big celebrity to come. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And you, number one, you hit the nail on the head in terms of like that awkward, and most people aren't Marianne, right? Like
Right.
most people go to an event and they're invited
100%.
by their boss or their neighbor or their colleague, and they're getting to the event and they're like, oh my gosh, I know no one. How do I connect with people? And so we thought, how do we immediately make people feel psychologically safe and remove those barriers of social anxiety?
Yeah.
And so this was one way to do it. And and you're right. Typically you walk into an event and you're just formulaically placed at a particular table, and then you're there for the entire night. And so this was just a little hack that we said, how can we really help people connect with not just the organization and the recipients, but each other before their butts hit the chairs?
Yeah.
And then to answer your question on the expense, I think that it's really important for organizations like this particular one, is like in the past, they looked at this annual gala as their main fundraiser. But this year, they didn't analyze the success of the event based on how much money that they raised that night. Rather, it was a kickoff to crack open doors for this strategic post-event follow-up, which led into their annual campaign. And so all of those like short videos that were displayed at those display walls, we broke those up in short form content that they've been using for the last 8 weeks now in donor meetings and email communications and social media and PR and TV commercials and local ad spots. And so we try and think about how do we maximize ROI, because you're going to have to invest to have a really magnificent experience. But the goal is to maximize the ROI on the back end, because we know that the fundraising it's not all going to happen the night of the event. The fortune is in the follow-up.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. That's a clever little one. The fortune is in the follow-up. Yes. And you also said, but I'm assuming that they raised more money or a lot of money at this event as well, right? I mean, that's part of the model.
Yeah, they did. They raised about $450 to $500,000 at the event. And as a part of this ongoing campaign, which has been about 8 to 9 weeks now, I believe they've raised just shy of $1 million.
Wow. So like half at the event and then half after. And so the ROI on the production, obviously, it was obviously whatever they put in, they got way more out of it. And I love what you said about the video, like that they're using that. They can probably use that for a really long time in a lot of other ways as well. That's awesome. I wanted to get a sense of like how else that you work with nonprofits. So that feels like it's pretty big event, and the Paralympics or that's a big event. Like what other types of work do you do?
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, we're very event and video focused, but and I understand that not everybody has the capacity or the production budget. They don't have a World Paralympic type global budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they may not have the immediate budget to invest something like these display walls. And so I don't want to deter smaller, more dynamic, intimate nonprofits from reaching out to us, because we are more about the cause than we are the profit. we're
Mm-hmm.
we're very cause focused. We like working with people that see the need to change and evolve as a blessing. And frankly, Marianne, I found it just as rewarding, if not more rewarding, helping a nonprofit with an operational budget of less than $1 million scale to $1.5 million or $2 million. Like that's more gratifying for us than helping a $10 million organization go to 10.2.
Right.
And so to answer your question, anything with events and media and marketing and storytelling, that's where that's our superpower. But no organization is too small for us, so long as we find that it's a good fit and that they're willing to be creative, because we'll be creative too and help and make sure that it works.
Right. In your experience, this is just from your experience, like in the field, where do you feel like, whether they work with you or not, how could nonprofits tell better stories?
Well, I go back to Simon Sinek's book, Following Your Why, or Start with Why,
Yeah.
rather.
Uh-huh.
And follow your different. Don't be afraid to be a little weird. And because like everyone is doing the same thing, right? Like we have to be okay stepping into this world of being a little bit weird and being authentic and being vulnerable and being emotional without exploiting recipients, but being thoughtful about those recipient stories. And not only the recipient stories, but your story as well as a nonprofit executive, right? Because like, Marianne, I don't know if it was you that said this or maybe someone that you interviewed. It might have been Kathy from I think her name's Kathy from Firespring, where she said that fundraising can be too princessy. And we have got to get raw and help people understand you saw a problem in this world. And you have now devoted and committed your life to eradicating that particular problem.
Yeah.
And we forget, like, we want to get to this proverbial mountaintop of success, but we forget to celebrate the little victories along the way. And at those victories, you're learning and you're growing and you're evolving. Like you've had to overcome unbelievable hurdles and challenges and struggles to get to those little victories and milestones. Those are the stories that you need to be sharing. Those are incredibly important and pertinent to you being able to grow. And when I think about video storytelling, the opportunity is don't make it like this, a podcast interview where you just have a talking head staring at a camera. Think about Netflix. Think about documentary styles where you're incorporating beautiful B-roll imagery to help tell your story like a movie instead of one particular individual or a group of individuals staring into the camera lens.
Yeah. I love what you said, authenticity. I talk about this a lot, and as a nonprofit, we're defined by what we're not, which is we don't make a profit. Like, okay, who cares? It's a tax code, whatever. But the fact that our society, our economy values businesses that make profits, and we don't, we're already, I feel like, a little bit at a loss, right? Like a little bit less than, which in turn, I think messes with our collective self-esteem, but that's another conversation. But anyway, so if you feel that you're less than, then you have to look better than just to be equal, right? Like that princess thing that you were talking about, like that was Kirsten Hill at Firespring. The princess thing, like we have to be shiny and pretty so that people will like believe in us, so we can just be considered equal, right? But like, so in the past, I think that was kind of what people were thinking they had to do. When what I'm hearing you say is it's about that, telling the real story, the, vulnerable, authentic story of all the lessons you're learning as you're learning them, the good and the bad, like just tell the true story. And I do feel like people want that. Like people want authenticity. There's so much crap. You know what I mean? There's so much posturing. People want authenticity and they're drawn to it. And also the other thing I'm hearing you say, you didn't really say it, but this is what came through for me, is like executive directors, CEOs, whoever is the face of your organization, step out and be that, like, because people connect with people, not organizations. Like you know what I mean? Like, and tell your story, like without getting too into, hey, like you're telling a story to relate to something greater, right? Not just for the purpose of like telling, a story, but like let people get to know you, let people see you and, and see who you are. And I think that is something that is not what we've been taught, or not like what people think they need to be in order to attract people. And it's really quite the opposite, right? The more of your humanity you share, the more people will be attracted to you.
Can I parlay on that?
Yeah.
I think that I go back to the quote from Jim Morrison, and the quote is, "Where's your will to be weird?" And so just do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Like normal is the assumption that the past is going to forever remain true. CEOs are looking at the predictive models to drive revenue and growth, but all data in the past is historical. And we know that sometimes history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, right? And so we're trying to create the future with a backward-looking lens, and that is impossible. And so if you want to be a category scientist, as my mentor Christopher Lochhead calls it, a category scientist is someone who is radically different and owns and dominates their industry. So think of Peloton, think of Coke, think of Southwest. Those are category scientists. They don't use data to create the future. They do the opposite. They think they're like, how can we tell people something that they're not ready to hear? How can we create exponential opportunities that are hidden in plain sight but might be in our blind spots? Well, we go to our customers. We ask them what they need. We share authentically about our, the reason why we created what we're created. We share the why. We tell them the value of, being a part of our brand and our organization. We help them more deeply connect with what it means to be a part of our community. And so those are the exponential opportunities to get out there and to share your weird, is just do the opposite. And remember, if you're comparing yourself to what others are doing, comparison is the thief of joy. It will rob you from all of that happiness. Just be happy being you, because you're amazing. and you're a noble servant leader and a change agent, and you are literally a life force on this planet, and people want to know what you are doing to make this world a better place.
So it just made me think of this story of an organization that an executive that I met, and he's no longer with this organization, but they used to do a gala every year. And but this is an organization that serves like teens, like basically like teen leadership kind of thing. And so it's full of like these crazy high energy, fun loving teenagers, and they put on this gala. Well, COVID hit, the gala stopped, and they wound up doing this virtual thing. And it was sort of like a they basically put on this show virtually, and the kids did different acts and all this stuff, and they loved it and they had the best time doing it. And they're like, why did we ever do a gala? That wasn't us, right? They inadvertently, COVID gave them the opportunity to get weird, right? Because like, well, I don't know what we're gonna do. Like, we don't know, that time was kind of like, I think we're gonna look back on that time. It'd be like people just said, you know what, let's try it, because what else, right? Like, what else are we gonna do? It gave us permission to try things, and they created this whole show, and the kids loved it, the donors loved it, everybody loved it. It was so much more in line with who they were as an organization, with their personality, both the collective personality of this organization, and they just loved it so much. And they kind of got weird, and in the way that you were talking about it, because I consider myself sort of a disruptor. I know that's shocking, right? But because I'm telling people stuff that they may not be ready to hear. So yesterday I did this workshop, and I was talking about, there's a Carl Jung quote, which is, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will rule you, and you will call it fate. And I talked about that in the terms of fundraising. And this woman said, I never thought shadow work would be a part of fundraising. And it is. Like, right? You have to face some demons to fundraise, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm telling people about, looking and what, like, removing blocks and barriers, what is in your unconscious that you're not even realizing is inhibiting your progress, and bringing those things to light. Well, people aren't talking about this stuff, like, but I just thought it was so funny. She's like, who knew shadow work? I'm like, right, I know, because no one's talking about that. And so, and I can tell you for sure, the more, like, I'm going to say weirder, because I'm going to use your language, I got, the happier I was, and the better people I attracted. You know what I'm saying? Because the more I claimed that, hey, this is what I'm good at, this is what I love doing, then it got a lot, I don't know, just things kind of got more flow. I'm just going to call it flow. And I do feel like the people that I work with, when they find their authentic voice, who they truly are, and the confidence to share, because see, in order to get weird, you have to kind of let go of the outcome, right? There's a lot you need to release in order to have the courage to be authentic. And so helping them get ready for that, that's the fun part. And then kind of watching it fly is amazing. And I'm sure you have those experiences as well, like because that's stepping into the unknown, right? Because what you're saying is, people look at data because they want to make a safe, good, decent choice, like our poor boards, and they're so risk averse because they don't, right? And then because they look at the data, what is the data? So you're like, screw data. What does our heart tell us? Well, that's not how we make decisions, Joey. Come on. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are we being guided? Like, no, we make decisions based on data and comparing ourselves to other organizations. Like, or maybe not. That's all I'm saying. Maybe not.
You just have to use a forward-looking lens to discover insights and reveal how the future is actually going to be different from the past. And if you don't do that, then unfortunately you become Blockbuster.
I have seen organizations, nonprofits, become Blockbuster because they couldn't shift for whatever reason. They couldn't shift. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I come back to this analogy of like scaling a business as a metaphor to playing a video game. Think about, like, have you ever gotten so stuck in a video game that you forget you're playing a video game? It's like you get lost, and I'll use my wife and one of my best friends, my wife Stephanie, and one of my best friends Mikey as an example here. They love Zelda, and so they're playing Zelda, and everything else around you disappears, right? Business is like playing a video game. Like there are a number of combinations on the controllers to help you graduate to the next level. And sometimes it's frustrating because we can't beat that boss to get to the next level. And in this case, the boss is your ego. The boss is your ego. So you have to realize it's not about being egocentric and protecting yourself and your image and what you think people want to know about you and hear about you, but about being eco-centric, being about people around you. And so scaling a business becomes that much more fun and that much more rewarding. But you have to get out of that place of concentration where you're lost in a level and step back and just remind yourself that life and scaling a business is a game.
Yeah.
It's just a game. And when you look at life that way, we're all children playing on a playground.
Yep. That is true. I'm going to be honest with you here. I have not played a video game. And so you're like,
we'll set you up with like a
not me. But I get it. I hear what you're saying. I get it.
We gotta get you like an N64 so you can play some Zelda.
So what do you?
Kart.
my oldest is a gamer, but I am not. All right. When we all hit COVID and we all had to go virtual, what do you see the future of events being? Are we going to be in person? Are we going to be virtual? Is it always going to be a hybrid? Like, where's this going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that you have to look at the biggest challenge for nonprofits right now is that I think a number of nonprofits have not come to terms with the changing demographics, Marianne. And you bring up a really valid point here, is that so when we look at events, if you're looking at generations, baby boomers in the past, they've loved going to these events because it's exciting and it's something that they've always loved doing.
It's what they know.
It's what they know. And so baby boomers are now passing wealth on to millennials and the next generation behind millennials, which is Gen Z, which is the largest generation in history. And so what we're working on and what we realize is we don't know where the future is headed, but we've just hired someone who does. It's like we need to be prepared to help and advise. And so we just brought on David Webb, who's a Washington University professor of sustainability. And so part of the evolution of nonprofits is to recognize changing demographics and changing values and start to try and shift their marketing and their approach to attracting younger generations. And so sustainability for an organization is about longevity and long-term operating potential rooted not just in physical solvency, but in social cohesion and really respect for critical resources that individuals, organizations, and all life depend. And we understand that resources are finite and there are an unlimited amount of noble and incredibly worthy nonprofit organizations. And sort of tying this all tying this all together and wrapping it up, we realize organizations need to continue to remain economically and socially viable. And to do that, you've really got to start to bring in this younger generation. And we hope David's going to help many of our nonprofit organizations and us here at Utopia do that exact thing.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball. I don't know where organizations or where the future is, Marianne, where events are headed. I think hybrid is here to stay. Because it allows organizations to do is take an event with a limited audience at a single moment in time inside a contained space and make it accessible to an infinite audience across time, no matter where people are.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. And then in addition to that, you have all this incredible content that you could package as, take your hybrid program, take all your video stories and break it up into smaller bits of marketing material that you can use as ongoing post-event collateral to continue to engage people, because this younger generation, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on LinkedIn. You got to go out and find them. And this content's going to help you engage them.
Yeah. And they're constantly making little video stories themselves. That's their language. I watch a lot of TikTok, and like kids are on there and they're telling their life story and processing things via these little videos. So I can see how video would be really important to them as a communication tool. Now, one of the things I think we learned is, what really needs to be in person and what can just, like be virtual. I mean, I had some clients in Chicago, and board members would have to drive like an hour in traffic, sometimes even more, to get to a meeting. Now, what do you think their mindset, their frame, how they're approaching that? It's going to be rough. And having virtual meetings was really helpful because it saved so much time. It allowed them to be more present at the experience. I think I think virtual, like almost my whole business is virtual. It's a great tool, and people tell me, oh, we're all zoomed out, and I say, I think people show up for what's important. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
like, yes, I get that there's a point where, yes, I wish we could do it in person. And also, I just tell people your magic can show up anywhere. And just believing that your magic can show up anywhere. But I do feel like what we're understanding right now is, okay, wow, wow, that was worth it, let's do that in person. And you know what, here's a thing that used to take up a lot of time that we realize is much more beneficial if we do it virtually. Like, I've done board retreats, and with boards that are from all over the country, they live all over the country, and then they come together for this meeting that would have taken them days and thousands of dollars to participate in, right? And literally, like, so their engagement goes way up because it's so much easier to participate in that level, instead of like asking them, you know what I'm saying, then asking them to like travel a lot. Not that they wouldn't get together every once in a while, but in the routine it was great. So I do feel like we can look at that and say, you know what works best. And also hybrid, yes, we can have this experience and then share it with the world if we want to. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, I look at the fact that we've done a number of focus groups with different donors of organizations, and they say we're not tired of virtual events. We're tired of boring digital environments. And so if your hope is that you're just going to passively do this one-way stream and pass things down to people on Zoom or YouTube, they're going to tune out, phase out, check their emails, check their text. You've got to find a way to engage people through these virtual environments and do it intentionally, and make sure that your virtual audience is not an afterthought. Otherwise, why wouldn't I just close the computer and just sit on my couch and watch Netflix? Because that's passive too, right? There's
Right.
no engagement. And so bringing the engagement into the digital world, putting recipients in breakout rooms as one little ninja hack, something that you can do to allow people online to connect with your recipients in a virtual environment. Like, that's something you could do. You could do donor retreats online. Ask your donors what they want to see from you. Excuse me. What matters most? If we were celebrating together, what would you want to be celebrating? How can we as an organization help your highest life aspirations come to life through our work here? You can do
Yeah.
those type of like donor retreats and focus groups in a virtual environment where you're not spending thousands of dollars on travel and
Right.
bringing people into this particular place.
Or they're not, or they're spending like hours to get there. Everybody jumps on, they say their stuff, because I do these sometimes too. They jump on, they say their stuff, you're like, great, thank you, and it makes it so easy for them to participate. You get so many good ideas when you do that. People just love to be asked for their opinion. They love to share what they think.
Yeah.
All right, is there anything else? We're almost out of time, so is there anything else you want folks to know?
What do you think I should share here? I mean, is there a particular thing that really stood out to you in our conversation that you think is worthy of
I would
reiterating?
love
Or
to give, I think it would be really good to could you give a quick example of like this idea of, when you said, follow your different, like an organization that kind of followed their different, and how that benefited them.
well, I think the example in terms of following your different, the one that we talked about a little earlier in our conversation with the art museum or the museum kind of like expose or exhibit, that was
Yeah.
one example of how a particular organization followed their different. But if I'm the only other thing that I would share is, a number of years ago. So this company was started by my mom in 2002, and the reason why I almost got very emotional at the beginning of our phone call or our interview today is because my mom's no longer with us. And she passed away 9 years ago from cancer. It'll actually be 10 years this coming weekend. um, and if my mom could see what we were helping nonprofit organizations create, and helping those that serve the world to serve the world in a larger capacity, she would be so incredibly proud.
Mm.
And this company went from operating from the kitchen table in our childhood home to now helping nonprofits all around the world. And that happened because I followed my different. Everyone told me no. I asked friends, I asked family, I asked mentors, I asked life coaches, and they said, follow the money. There's more money in, there's money in corporate, there's money in private events, there's no money in nonprofits. And I did that. We did that for a while. And we said, there's something about this that doesn't feel aligned. And when we started working with nonprofits, going against the grain and doing what everybody told us not to do, because they said, well, you won't be able to maintain a successfully financially solvent business if you go that route. And I said, watch us, just watch. And we went that route because we wanted to work with change agents and people that were making the world a better place. Fast forward 9 years that I've now been in, 8 years that I've now been involved with the company. And we're helping those nonprofits. We're doing what people said that we weren't able to do. And it was because of one tiny decision that I made 8 years ago. And so I would just say that life is a series of moments. Life is a series of decisions. And it just takes one little decision of you stepping out of that comfort zone, stepping out of the box and the confines of what everybody else tells you that you have to stay within, and coloring outside of the lines to really become the person that this world intended you to become, and to grow your organization into the one that's going to be able to eradicate the problem that you saw on this world that you're trying to solve for.
Mm-hmm.
So following your different is so incredibly important, and it all starts with you. And so what is that decision that you're going to make today? What is that decision? What's that bigger question that you're going to ask of yourself? And maybe it starts with, hey, if you and I are celebrating a glass of champagne 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from today, what are we celebrating? What are we celebrating? Don't be afraid to step into the most unique version of yourself, because your recipients need you. This community needs you. The world needs you.
Wow. Thank you. That was amazing. Whew. I think people need to just re-listen to that, like on a meditation, in the morning. Get you ready for the day with that. And I agree with you 100%. I get that feedback a lot. Like, oh, you work with nonprofit. How do you make that a business? Like, oh, I never wanted to do anything else. So, and all right. So last question, and we're going to wrap it up. I always the same question every time. So you and I share a city. And so the chances of us being at karaoke together seem high to me, because we do have like mutual friends. So if we're ever at karaoke together, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Just a small town girl living in a lonely world.
All right, there we go. I love it. I mean, that's a classic. That's a classic. It gets people singing, that's for sure.
I think you and I would do an amazing duet to that song.
My best friend sings that song, and she does a really good job. So maybe she could do that with you. I love karaoke. It's my favorite thing. And so everywhere I like sing karaoke around town. So, I'm sure we'll connect one day. and I want to hear it. Yeah, I would duet with you if you wanted.
I would love it. I would love it. That'd be awesome. Yeah, and I look forward to continuing this conversation and to
Yeah.
continuing to build our relationship outside of this podcast. And I'm very honored, Marianne. I'm very honored, and I hope this was valuable for your community.
I know it was. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you? The utopiaexperience.com. You said there's
Yeah.
where all the good stuff is. What's the good stuff there?
Um, there are a lot of resources, tips and tricks, and videos. A lot of different videos, just maybe to inspire you or to get you thinking about some of the things we talked about in a different way. And if I can ever be of value to you, please feel free to email us. If you go to our website, like Marianne just mentioned, and just send a message to the info@utopiaexperience.com email address, I get forwarded all of those emails. If you just put Marianne's podcast in the subject line, let me know how we can help.
All right.
I go back to what we just shared a moment ago. Is that for us? This is about helping those that help the world, and I would love to be a part of your journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll put the link to the website in the show notes as well. So if you're like driving or whatever, you can have that when you're ready for it. Thank you so much, Joey. It was so great to spend time with you today. And that's it for me for this episode of The Influential Nonprofit. If you haven't yet, you can go to theinfluentialnonprofit.com. You can download your Up-Level Your Influence Starter Kit, and it's a ton of goodies in there to around a lot of the concepts that goes deeper into a lot of the concepts I talk about on this podcast, and including a step-by-step template on how to ask people for money that doesn't stress anybody out. So that's always a good thing to have. All right, we'll see you next time on The Influential Nonprofit.